when was it the first time you felt like that maybe you were, gay?
Right. I'm going back to my childhood now. I was born in London. I can remember, even as a little lad, having an unusual interest in boys. There were one or two boys I couldn't put a finger on what it was. I had no idea. I certainly didn't feel what I later recognised as sexual attraction. I was brought up in total ignorance of sex whatsoever, coming from a very, very devout and strict Roman Catholic family where anything below the waist was regarded as filthy. So I was, I suppose, repressed. And then in 1959, I went to the London Oratory Grammar School. I began to be bullied. Some of the older boys were making what I now realise were homophobic remarks, but these were not, thank goodness, children in my own class. My own class were fantastic, and I'm still friends with most of them now. There's some of the older boys on the train going to different schools that I began to feel what I now recognise as sexual attraction to them. I fought against it, and as a good Catholic, I would go to confession and tell the priest, because I felt I was evil, I was wrong, I was being made wrong, I think now looking back, I actually got depression over it. And he would say the usual, I'll just say 3 Our Fathers and 3 Hail Marys, now Blessed Lady will take all that away from you. It didn't happen. But when I was about 17, 18, there was a lovely boy came to school, and we became good friends. We had a physical attraction for each other, and we kissed. We became lovers for a while, and he moved away, and we lost touch. This would have been 1965. So theoretically I've broken the law, because the law hadn't changed at that point, and it was really hard for me to reconcile the fact that I was what we didn't use the word gay in those days, that I was gay. Couldn't tell my parents, I'd have been thrown out. My father was very homophobic, as I came to realise. Mother might have tolerated it, I don't know. I did then start meeting other men. I even went cottaging, but I did make some very good liaisons with other men. And really that took me up until I decided I was going to be a teacher. My mother had died, my father remarried, and I moved in with the couple that later became my very best friends, and whose wife became my wife years later. And I did come out to them in 1972. We were living in Kent then. I had left a note in my coat pocket from somebody I was having a liaison with, and Audrey found it. I nearly died, I nearly fainted, and I said, well, it's what it says. I'm meeting this chap. Oh, she said, just be careful. And that was it. And she didn't mind at all. And Roy, her husband, knew the same. He had a very, very liberal attitude. They're both strict churchgoers, but members of the Church of England, which was much more liberal than the Roman Catholic Church. And I then began to feel more comfortable with myself. I did my teacher training, and of course as a teacher there is this myth that all gay men are paedophiles. But I just didn't want to put myself in the way of any remote possibility of anything untoward happening. So I kept it completely quiet. But yes, in the 80s, of course we got AIDS, and that, of course, I was very, very aware of. And of course, at that point, if I did make a liaison with anybody, we were just being very sensible. But of course, the gay scene really died pretty rapidly for a long while. And then later I was appointed to come and teach here on the island, and Audrey and her first husband's family were already living here, which was one of the reasons why we came down. And
so how was that transition from London to the island?
Very easy, because I spent most of my life on the island. Always wanted to live here since 1954, when I first came with my late mother. And I had rejected Roman Catholicism by then, and I had become a fully fledged member of the Church of England. And I thought, I began to feel much more comfortable in myself. And then I met a very lovely chap. Our eyes met as we passed, and something clicked, and we sort of recognised something in common. I said, you're gay? And he said, oh yeah. He said, I fancy you. And I said, I quite fancy you too. This would have been 1990. He and I became very good friends. We would meet up regularly for sex at his flat, and we enjoyed a very good friendship. And I said, we still do, but not sexual now.
And what about Section 28? Did that affect you? How did that affect you?
Fortunately not, because I was teaching young children, and we didn't do any sex education at primary school. And Audrey and I discussed it, we used to talk about it, because my sexuality, it wasn't, as I say, it wasn't a secret. And, you know, she said, we're born as we are. You can't do anything about it, you know. And she said, why should governments repress people? When my wife's first husband died in 1991, our friendship shifted to a closer friendship of a deep love, but not a sexual love. And she was perfectly happy with that. And so we got married nearly 26 years ago. And we agreed that I would do nothing about my sexuality whatsoever while she was alive, because she was 20 years older than me. And so we had an absolutely wonderful life. When Audrey died last year, that took everything out of my life. But very gradually, as time has gone on, I thought, I'm on my own, I'm now free. The whole attitude towards gay men has changed. I just felt comfortable in myself for the first time in my life. So I decided then to come out to all sorts of people. My first move was coming to the coffee mornings at Ryde. And I looked up on the internet and I found the Rainbow Cafe and the Moncton Arts. Sat with lots of other lovely gay men and women, lesbians, and I really felt I'm with my own people. And I thought, right, I've got to pursue this now. I just felt that I wanted to be me and people to know who I am. So I came out to one or two people at church. I knew they were both gay anyway, and they just said, oh, tell us something we don't know already. So I was very relieved. It was lovely. I came out 3 weeks ago to my step-great-grandson, to be honest, and his girlfriend, and she took one look at me and said, by golly, that was a weight off your shoulders, wasn't it? And she gave me a big hug. And my great-grandson did the same. He was a bit surprised, but very, very welcoming and very happy. And his brother was there, my other great-grandson, and he said, he put his arms around me, he said, we'll support you through everything you do. And that meant so much to me, I just burst into tears. And that was in Nando's in Clapham Common, Clapham High Street. And that is more or less where I am today. Just being me, letting people know, and they've treated me with the most wonderful respect.
Do you think your health or your mental health, mental well-being was ever affected?
Yes, at times. Certainly when I was at school, looking back, I know that I would have been diagnosed clinically depressed, because I bunked off school a few times because I was terrified of the bullies. 70s, I did actually fall in love with somebody. I mean, he's dead straight, he was totally unrequited. And we shared a flat for a very, very short time. And one day I popped over to the flat. Door to the living room, which was also his bedroom, was locked. He came to the door, put his head round the door, and he was naked. And I could hear some giggling. It really got to me, and I was quite ill for some time. So yes, I did have a break. And that was, I think deep down was sexual, based on my sexual attraction to him. I just couldn't take it. And then when I got depression again in the 1990s, when I took early retirement, it was school-related purely, because the head and the deputy couldn't run a piss up in a brewery. Yeah, because I had some counselling, and I came out to the counsellor. But yeah, she said, I suspect that there is an element of this. Although sex wasn't the catalyst, it was the education side. You know, she thought there was definitely some sexual element because of having to suppress everything all the time. And she thought it wasn't any good for me. I can't envisage me ever having a relationship with anybody else. And I'm quite happy like that, because I've got so much support from a wonderful community that I live in.
You said you went to Pride, was that your first ever Pride?
Yeah, I decided that Saturday morning. Well, I'd been to London, you see, and I'd come out to the family. And of course I had hugs and kisses from all of them. They all rushed over to me, and I said, it's taken all these years for me to admit this in public. And I thought, right, let's pluck up courage and go. Got up on the train, got off at the Esplanade and sat on the wall. Got chatting to some lovely people. There were families, all the little kids with their rainbow flags. I thought, oh, this is great. And I watch the parade. I went down to have some fish and chips and joined up, sat with 1 or 2 other nice people, and I got the train home. I'm very glad I went.
Is there anything you want to leave for the records for the future?
A very wise person said, God doesn't make mistakes. And just be happy that we are who we are, and don't be ashamed of what we are and who we are. We don't choose our sexuality. Be yourself.